Captain Ilara Voss stood at the viewport of her small apartment on Earth's orbital station, her steely gray eyes fixed on the blue-green orb below. At 45, she still cut an impressive figure, tall, lean, and battle-hardened from years of service in the Terran Space Marines. Her close-cropped silver hair and the long scar running down her left cheek were testaments to a life lived on the front lines of humanity's expansion into the stars. But those days were behind her now, or so she thought. The gentle chime of an incoming message broke her reverie. "Computer, display message," she commanded, her voice gruff from disuse. A holographic screen materialized before her, displaying the solemn face of a Novanian, a species known for their iridescent skin and multifaceted eyes. "Greetings, Captain Voss," the alien said, its voice a melodious trill. "I am Jurix, legal executor for the estate of Zorax Thal. I regret to inform you of his passing." Ilara's heart clenched. Zorax had been more than just an alien diplomat. He'd been a true friend, one of the few beings in the galaxy she trusted implicitly. They'd met during a joint peacekeeping mission years ago, and despite their differences, had forged a bond stronger than steel. "Zorax," she murmured, her throat tight. "How?" "I'm afraid the circumstances of his death are unclear," Jurix replied, his faceted eyes dimming slightly. "But that is not the primary reason for my contact. Captain Voss, Zorax has named you as the primary beneficiary of his estate." Ilara blinked, sure she had misheard. "I'm sorry. What?" "You have inherited the bulk of Zorax Thal's considerable holdings," Jurix continued, seemingly unfazed by her confusion. "This includes his residence on Novenar, his personal effects, and his controlling interest in Thal Industries." The name hit Ilara like a plasma bolt. Thal Industries was one of the largest corporations in the galaxy, a powerhouse of technological innovation that had revolutionized everything from faster-than-light travel to terraforming. And Zorax had left it all to her. "There must be some mistake," Ilara said, shaking her head. "Surely his family." "I assure you, there is no mistake," Jurix interrupted gently. "Zorax was quite clear in his will. He also left a personal message for you, to be delivered upon your arrival on Novenar." Ilara's mind reeled. Novenar, the alien homeworld she'd visited only once, years ago. The thought of returning there, of stepping into Zorax's shoes, it was overwhelming. I need time to think," she stammered. Jurix nodded, his iridescent skin shimmering. "Of course. However, I must stress the urgency of the situation. There are elements that would seek to take advantage of this transition period. Your presence on Novenar would do much to stabilize the situation." Ilara's eyes narrowed. She recognized a plea for help when she heard one, even from an alien lawyer. "What aren't you telling me, Jurix?" The Novanian's multifaceted eyes seemed to darken. "There have been threats against Zorax's widow, against the company. Your friend had many enemies, Captain Voss. Enemies who may see his death as an opportunity." A familiar fire ignited in Ilara's chest, the same fire that had driven her through countless battles across the stars. Zorax had been her friend, and now he needed her one last time. She couldn't let him down. "I'll be there," she said, her voice hard with resolve. "Send me the coordinates for your office. I'll leave immediately." Relief washed over Jurix's alien features. "Thank you, Captain. I will make the necessary arrangements. And may I offer my condolences. Zorax spoke often of you. He considered you family." The words hit Ilara harder than she expected. Family. It had been so long since she'd had anyone she could call that. "Thank you," she managed, before ending the transmission. For a long moment, she stood in silence, staring out at the earth below. Then, with a decisive nod, she turned to her sparse living quarters. "Computer, begin packing sequence. Prepare my ship for launch." As her few possessions were efficiently sorted and stored by the apartment's automated systems, Ilara strapped on her old combat suit, The familiar weight of the armor was comforting, even if it was years out of date. She hadn't worn it since retiring, but something told her she'd need it on Novenar. An hour later, Ilara stood in the hangar bay, staring up at her personal ship, a sleek, battle-scarred vessel that had carried her through more firefights than she cared to remember. As she ran her hand along its hull, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was embarking on her most important mission yet. "All right, old girl," she murmured to the ship, "one last adventure." For Zorax. The engines roared to life, and moments later, Ilara was hurtling through the void, leaving Earth far behind. As the stars streaked by, her mind raced with questions. Why had Zorax left her everything? What dangers awaited her on Novenar? And most importantly, was she ready to take on the responsibility of not just a vast corporation, but an alien world's future? She didn't have the answers. But as Captain Ilara Voss plotted her course to Novenar, she knew one thing for certain. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them head-on. For Zorax, for his people, and for the galaxy they had both fought to protect. The adventure was just beginning. The alien widow and the corporation. The spaceport of Novenar's capital city, Lumina, was a breathtaking sight. Crystalline towers stretched towards the violet sky, their faceted surfaces refracting the light of the system's binary stars into a dazzling array of colors. As Ilara's ship touched down on the landing pad, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and trepidation. A small welcoming party awaited her, led by the familiar form of Jurix. Beside him stood a figure that made Ilara's breath catch in her throat. A female Novanian of extraordinary beauty, her iridescent skin shimmering with patterns of deep blue and purple. This, Ilara realized, must be Lyria, Zorax's widow. As Ilara descended the ship's ramp, Lyria stepped forward. "Captain Voss," she said, her voice a melodious trill that seemed to resonate in Ilara's very bones. "Welcome to Novenar. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." Ilara nodded, suddenly acutely aware of her own rough appearance next to the ethereal Novanian. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said gruffly. Zorax was. He was a good friend. Lyria's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer with unshed tears. "He spoke often of you. I feel as though I know you already." She gestured towards the towering spires of the city. "Please come. We have much to discuss." The journey to Thal Industries headquarters was a blur of alien sights and sounds. Ilara found herself struggling to take it all in, her military training kicking in as she scanned for potential threats. But it wasn't until they were safely ensconced in Zorax's, now her private office, that the true gravity of the situation became clear. "Captain Voss," Jurix began, his tone grave. "There's something you need to know about the nature of your inheritance." Ilara braced herself. "I'm listening." "Thal Industries isn't just a corporation," Lyria interjected, her alien features set in a determined expression. "It's the backbone of Novanian society. Our technology, our infrastructure, our very way of life. It all depends on the innovations developed here. And now it depends on you," Jurix added. Ilara felt the weight of their words settle on her shoulders like a physical burden. "Why me?" she asked, voicing the question that had been gnawing at her since she'd received the news. Surely there were more qualified candidates. "Your own people." "It had to be you," Lyria said softly. Zorax. He knew what was coming. The threats, the danger. He knew we'd need someone like you to weather the storm. "What danger?" Ilara demanded, her soldier's instincts flaring. "What aren't you telling me?" Jurix and Lyria exchanged a glance. "There have been attempts," Jurix said carefully. "Industrial sabotage, cyber attacks, and more recently, physical threats against Lyria and other key members of the company. We believe there's a conspiracy," Lyria added, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone, or something, is trying to take control of Thal Industries. And if they succeed, they control Novenar," Ilara finished, the pieces falling into place. "And with it, a significant portion of this sector's advanced technology. She leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Do you have any leads? Nothing concrete, Jurix admitted, but we suspect the involvement of the Syndicate. Ilara's blood ran cold. The Syndicate, a shadowy organization that operated in the fringes of civilized space, dealing in everything from illegal weapons to forbidden tech. She tangled with them before, during her military days. The thought of them getting their hands on Thal Industries' resources was terrifying. All right, she said, her voice hardening with resolve. I'll need full access to all company records, security protocols, everything. And I want a complete briefing on all recent incidents. Lyria nodded, relief evident in her alien features. Of course, I'll have everything sent to your personal terminal immediately. As Jurix began outlining the security measures already in place, Ilara found her gaze drawn to Lyria. The Novanian widow stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, staring out at the glittering cityscape. There was a vulnerability in her posture that tugged at Ilara's heart. Mrs. Thal, Ilara said softly, moving to stand beside her. Lyria, I want you to know, I'm here to help, in whatever way I can. Lyria turned to her, her multifaceted eyes shimmering with emotion. Thank you, Captain. I feel safer already, knowing you're here. She hesitated, then added, and please, call me Lyria. Ilara nodded, feeling a strange warmth bloom in her chest. Ilara, she offered in return. As they stood there, looking out over the alien city, they were both now responsible for protecting. Ilara felt a fierce determination take hold. She may not have asked for this inheritance, but she'd be damned if she'd let Zorax down. Whatever threats lurked in the shadows, whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them. For Zorax, for Lyria, for Novanar. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Ilara threw herself into understanding the intricacies of Thal Industries, poring over reports and financial statements late into the night. She implemented new security protocols, drawing on her military experience to shore up the company's defenses. But even as she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. The attacks, while concerning, seemed almost theatrical, as if they were meant to distract from something else. It wasn't until the fifth day, during a routine inspection of one of Thal Industries' research facilities, that Ilara's instincts were proven right. As she and Lyria toured the high-security lab, a sudden explosion rocked the building. Alarms blared as smoke filled the air. Ilara's combat training kicked in instantly. She grabbed Lyria, shielding the Novanian with her own body as debris rained down around them. Are you all right? Ilara shouted over the chaos. Lyria nodded, her alien features tight with fear. Yes, but the prototype. We have to. Another explosion cut her off, closer this time. Ilara's eyes narrowed. This was no accident. They were under attack. As screaming scientists fled past them, Ilara made a split-second decision. We're getting out of here, she growled, drawing the sidearm she'd insisted on carrying. Stay close to me. Together, they fought their way through the smoke-filled corridors, Ilara's military instincts guiding them toward safety. But as they neared the exit, a dark figure loomed before them, weapon raised. Ilara didn't hesitate. She fired, her shot finding its mark with deadly accuracy. The attacker fell, revealing a face that made both women gasp in shock. It was a face they knew well, one of Thal Industries' own board members. As sirens wailed in the distance, and the full implications of what they'd discovered began to sink in, Ilara and Lyria shared a grim look. The conspiracy ran deeper than they'd imagined, and the real battle was just beginning. Corporate espionage and betrayal. The aftermath of the attack on the research facility was chaos. As emergency responders swarmed the site, Ilara stood protectively near Lyria, her keen eyes scanning for any further threats. The body of the board member, Krixvarn, Ilara recalled, had been discreetly removed, but the implications of his involvement hung heavy in the air. We need to go, Ilara said quietly to Lyria. It's not safe here. Lyria nodded, her iridescent skin pale with shock. My private residence, she suggested. It has top-level security protocols. As they made their way through the city in Lyria's personal transport, Ilara's mind raced. A board member involved in the attack. It confirmed her worst fears. The threat wasn't just external. It was coming from within Thal Industries itself. Lyria's home was a marvel of Novanian architecture, a structure that seemed to grow organically from the crystalline landscape. Once inside, Ilara did a thorough sweep before allowing herself to relax slightly. All right, she said, turning to Lyria. We need to talk. What was in that lab that was so important? Lyria hesitated, her multifaceted eyes darting nervously. It's complicated. Zorax was working on something revolutionary. A new form of energy generation that could change everything. Ilara frowned. Change how? It could make our current energy systems obsolete, Lyria explained. Clean, unlimited power. It would reshape the economy of not just Novenar, but the entire sector. And reshape the balance of power, Ilara added grimly. She could see why such technology would be tempting to the Syndicate, or anyone else looking to gain an advantage. We need to find out who else is involved, Ilara said, pacing the room. Varn couldn't have been working alone. Lyria nodded, moving to a sleek console. I can access the company's secure files from here. Maybe we can find some clues. As Lyria worked, Ilara kept watch, her soldiers' instincts on high alert. But it was Lyria's sudden gasp that made her spin around. What is it? Lyria's face was a mask of disbelief. These access logs. Someone's been copying classified files. Someone with top-level clearance. Ilara leaned in, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the data. Can you trace it? Lyria's fingers flew over the console. Yes, I think. Oh no. The name that appeared on the screen made Ilara's blood run cold. Jurix. It can't be, Lyria whispered. Jurix has been with the company for decades. He was Zorax's most trusted advisor. Ilara's mind was already racing ahead. Which would give him the perfect cover, she said grimly. We need to. Her words were cut off by a sudden, piercing alarm. Red lights began flashing throughout the residence. Perimeter breach, Lyria said, her voice tight with fear. They're here. Ilara sprang into action. Is there a safe room? Lyria nodded, already moving. This way. They sprinted through the house, the sound of breaking glass and heavy footsteps echoing behind them. Just as they reached the entrance to the safe room, a figure stepped out from the shadows. Going somewhere? Jurix asked, his normally melodious voice cold and hard. Ilara didn't hesitate. She lunged forward, her combat training taking over. But Jurix was faster than she expected, dodging her attack with inhuman grace. I'm sorry it had to come to this, Jurix said, drawing a weapon. But the future of Novenar is at stake. Zorax was a fool to think his little project could remain secret. So you sold out to the Syndicate, Ilara spat, positioning herself protectively in front of Lyria. Jurix laughed, a chilling sound. The Syndicate. They're small time compared to what's really going on. This goes far beyond Novenar, Captain Voss. There are forces at work you can't begin to comprehend. Try me, Ilara growled, her mind racing for a way out of this situation. But before Jurix could respond, there was a blur of movement. Lyria, in a display of unexpected agility, had lunged for a decorative object on a nearby table. In one fluid motion, she hurled it at Jurix. The momentary distraction was all Ilara needed. She tackled Jurix, sending them both crashing to the floor. The weapon skittered away as they grappled, Jurix's alien strength nearly matching Ilara's combat-honed reflexes. Lyria, run, Ilara shouted, struggling to keep Jurix pinned. But Lyria didn't run. Instead, she scooped up Jurix's fallen weapon and leveled it at the betrayer. Enough, she said, her voice trembling but firm. "It's over, Jurix." Jurix went still, his multifaceted eyes darting between the two women. Then, unexpectedly, he began to laugh. "You think this changes anything?" he wheezed. "You have no idea what's coming. The prototype, it's already gone, and soon, Novenar will fall." Before either of them could react, Jurix bit down hard on something in his mouth. His body began to convulse, foam bubbling from his lips. "No," Ilara cried, but it was too late. In seconds, Jurix was still, his eyes staring sightlessly at the ceiling. For a moment, the only sound was their heavy breathing. Then, distantly, they heard the wail of sirens. Ilara stood slowly, her mind reeling from the rapid turn of events. She turned to Lyria, who was staring at Jurix's body in shock. "Are you okay?" Ilara asked softly. Lyria nodded mutely, then seemed to shake herself. What do we do now?" Ilara's expression hardened. "Now, we fight back. Jurix might be gone, but whoever he was working for is still out there. And they have the prototype." As the sounds of approaching security forces grew louder, Ilara and Lyria shared a look of grim determination. The battle for Novenar was far from over, and they were the only ones who could stop what was coming. The battle for Novenar. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. With Jurix's betrayal exposed, Ilara and Lyria worked tirelessly to root out any remaining conspirators within Thal Industries. The corporation was in turmoil, but Ilara's military background proved invaluable in maintaining order and implementing new security protocols. As they delved deeper into Jurix's communications, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The conspiracy extended far beyond Novenar, involving powerful entities from across the galaxy. At the center of it all was the prototype energy device, a technology so revolutionary it could reshape the balance of power throughout known space. "We need to get that prototype back," Ilara said grimly, poring over the latest intelligence reports, "before they can reverse engineer it or worse, weaponize it." Lyria nodded, her iridescent skin shimmering with determination. "I think I might know where they've taken it. There's an old mining facility on Novenar's moon. It's been abandoned for years, but our sensors have picked up unusual energy signatures there recently." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "It's worth checking out, but we'll need backup. This is bigger than just us now." With Lyria's authority as acting CEO of Thal Industries, they assembled a team of trusted Novanian security forces and a handful of off-world mercenaries Ilara had connections with from her military days. As they prepared for the assault on the moon base, Ilara couldn't help but feel a familiar tension. The pre-battle jitters she hadn't experienced since her days in the Space Marines. The night before the operation, Ilara found Lyria standing alone on the balcony of Thal Industries headquarters, gazing up at the looming form of Novenar's moon. "Nervous?" Ilara asked softly, moving to stand beside her. Lyria's multifaceted eyes shimmered in the starlight. "Terrified," she admitted, "but also ready. Zorax always said that great change requires great courage. I think I understand that now." Ilara felt a surge of admiration for the Novanian woman. "You're braver than you give yourself credit for," she said. "Zorax would be proud." Lyria turned to her, a complex emotion playing across her alien features. "Ilara, I thank you for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Ilara felt a warmth blooming in her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. But before she could respond, an alarm blared from inside. "Captain Voss," a voice called urgently. "We're picking up multiple ships entering the system." The moment shattered, Ilara and Lyria rushed inside. The command center was a flurry of activity, holographic displays showing a fleet of unmarked vessels approaching Novenar. "They must have realized we were onto them," Ilara growled. "They're making their move now." Lyria's face was set with determination. Then so are we. Launch all available ships. We need to buy time for the ground assault on the moon base. As chaos erupted across Novenar, Ilara found herself back in her element. She coordinated the planet's defenses from the command center, her years of military experience proving invaluable as she directed fighters and positioned defensive batteries. But the enemy was strong and well prepared. As the battle raged in orbit, reports came in of ground assaults on key Thal Industries facilities across the planet. Thereafter any backups of the prototype data, Lyria realized, her voice tight with stress. Ilara nodded grimly. We need to end this now. Lyria, can you hold things here? The Novanian woman straightened, a fierce light in her eyes. Go, bring back that prototype. I'll keep Novenar safe. With a final, lingering look, Ilara sprinted for the hangar bay. Moments later, she was rocketing towards Novenar's moon in a sleek assault craft, leading a mixed team of Novanians and off-worlders on what might be a suicide mission. The moon base was a fortress, its defenses formidable. But Ilara and her team had the element of surprise and a lot of pent-up rage. They fought their way through automated turrets and enemy soldiers, Ilara's pulse pounding in her ears as she fell back into the rhythms of combat. Finally, they reached the central chamber. There, surrounded by humming machinery, stood the prototype, a deceptively small device that could change the fate of the galaxy. But they weren't alone. I must admit, I'm impressed, came a silky voice. From the shadows stepped a figure Ilara recognized from intelligence briefings. Zora Vex, a notorious arms dealer with ties to a dozen illegal organizations. You've caused quite a lot of trouble, Captain Voss. Ilara raised her weapon, her team fanning out behind her. Step away from the prototype. Vex. It's over. Zara laughed. A chilling sound. Oh, I don't think so. You see, while you've been fighting your little battle, my associates have been busy. Even as we speak, similar devices are being activated on key worlds across the sector. Novenar was just the beginning. Ilara's blood ran cold as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about one planet or one corporation. It was about reshaping the entire galactic order. Why? Ilara demanded, buying time as she desperately tried to formulate a plan. Zora's eyes gleamed with fanatical light. Because the old ways are dying, Captain. The governments, the corporations, they're all relics of a bygone era. We're ushering in a new age, one where power belongs to those bold enough to seize it. You're insane, Ilara growled. Perhaps, Zora conceded. But I'm also winning. What happened next was a blur of action. Zora made a move for the prototype. Ilara's team opened fire, and the room erupted into chaos. In the midst of the firefight, Ilara found herself grappling with Zora, both of them struggling for control of the device. As they fought, Ilara could hear the sounds of battle raging outside. Novenar's fate, and perhaps the fate of the entire sector, hung in the balance. With a final, desperate surge of strength, Ilara wrenched the prototype from Zora's grasp. But as she did, she felt something give way inside the device. A high-pitched whine filled the air, growing louder by the second. Ilara's eyes met Zora's, and in that moment, they both understood. The prototype was overloading. As energy began to crackle around them, Ilara made a split-second decision. With all her might, she hurled the device towards the reinforced window overlooking the moon's barren surface. The last thing Ilara saw before the world turned white was the prototype sailing through the shattered window, out into the void of space. Then everything exploded in a nova of light and sound, and Ilara knew no more. A new beginning. Consciousness returned to Ilara slowly, like a ship emerging from the fog of hyperspace. The first thing she became aware of was pain, a dull, throbbing ache that seemed to encompass her entire body. Then came the sounds. The soft beep of medical equipment, the low hum of air recyclers. She opened her eyes, wincing at the bright light. As her vision cleared, she found herself staring at a familiar iridescent face. "Lyria," she croaked, her voice rough from disuse. The Novanian's multifaceted eyes lit up with relief. "Ilara, you're awake." She reached out, taking Ilara's hand in her own. "We were so worried. You've been unconscious for days." Ilara tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness forced her back down. "What happened?" "The prototype." Zara Vex. "Easy," Lyria soothed. "It's over." The prototype's destruction created a massive electromagnetic pulse. It knocked out Vex's ships and most of the technology on the moonbase. Our forces were able to mop up the resistance after that. Ilara let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "And Novanar?" "Safe," Lyria assured her. "Thanks to you. The attack was repelled, and we've been working around the clock to root out the last of the conspirators." As Lyria filled her in on the details, Ilara felt a growing sense of relief, tinged with something else, a warmth that had little to do with her injuries and everything to do with the Novanian woman at her bedside. Over the next few weeks, as Ilara recovered, she and Lyria worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been broken. Fell Industries underwent a massive restructuring, with new safeguards put in place to prevent future infiltrations. The technology behind the prototype was secured, with plans to develop it responsibly under the oversight of a coalition of trusted governments. But it wasn't all business. As they worked side by side, Ilara found herself drawn more and more to Lyria. The Novanian's strength, intelligence, and compassion were a constant source of inspiration. And if the lingering glances and soft touches were any indication, the feeling was mutual. Finally, on the eve of Ilara's full recovery, they stood together on the balcony where they had shared that moment before the battle. The lights of Lumina sparkled below them, a testament to the resilience of Novanar and its people. "So," Lyria said softly, her iridescent skin shimmering in the starlight, "what happens now?" Ilara turned to her, suddenly acutely aware of how close they were standing. "I've been thinking about that," she said. "Zorax left me this responsibility for a reason. I can't just walk away." Lyria's eyes seemed to glow with an inner light. "Does that mean you're staying?" "If you'll have me," Ilara replied, her voice low. "Not just as CEO, but, well, in whatever capacity you'd like." For a moment, Lyria was silent, and Ilara felt her heart hammering in her chest. Then, slowly, the Novanian smiled, a radiant expression that took Ilara's breath away. "I think," Lyria said, reaching out to cup Ilara's face with one delicate hand, "that I'd like you in every capacity." As their lips met, human and Novanian, so different yet so perfectly matched, Ilara felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was where she belonged, not just on Novanar, but here with Lyria. In the days and weeks that followed, Ilara and Lyria faced the challenges of rebuilding together. There were still threats to be dealt with, technologies to be developed, and a corporation to run. But they faced it all as partners, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Fell Industries flourished under their joint leadership, becoming a beacon of innovation and ethical progress. The lessons learned from the prototype incident led to new policies and technologies that made the galaxy a safer, more connected place. And if anyone found it strange that a retired human space marine and a Novanian corporate leader had fallen in love, well, they kept it to themselves. In a galaxy full of wonders and dangers, Ilara and Lyria had found something rare and precious, a love that transcended species and space. As they stood together on their balcony one evening, watching the twin suns of Novanar's system set in a blaze of color, Ilara reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. From soldier to CEO, from lone wolf to partner, from Earth to this alien world that now felt like home. "Penny for your thoughts?" Lyria asked, her head resting on Ilara's shoulder. Ilara smiled, pulling her close. "Just thinking about how lucky I am, how grateful I am to Zorax for bringing us together." Lyria's multifaceted eyes shimmered with emotion. He would be proud of what we've accomplished, of what we've become. Yeah, Ilara agreed softly. I think he would. As night fell over Novenar, bringing with it the promise of new adventures and challenges, Ilara and Lyria stood together, ready to face whatever the galaxy might throw at them. They had each other, they had a purpose, and they had a love that spanned the stars. It was, Ilara thought, one hell of an inheritance.